Hi, my name's Jim McCarthy, here today to talk about the Sex Pistols graphic novel, written by myself and illustrated by Steve Parkhouse and published by Omnibus Press. Yeah, one of the things that fed very well into the graphic novel was the fact that punk was so visual. The whole use of like the Union Jack in a subversive sort of way, and Jamie Reed's graphics with there's amazing graphics of the Queen with the safety pin through a lip on the Anarchy or the God Save the Queen single cover was just so fantastic. And so yes, we did try and feed a lot of that into the book. You know, even the cover itself has the Union Jack motif behind the back and the kind of basic colours based on the colour palette of the Nevermind the Bollocks. I have a very good friend called Jar Wobble, whose his real name's John Wardle, but he took his first base was given to him in a squat in London by Sid Vicious, and he was very friendly with. He was known as the Four Johns. There was John Gray, John Lydon, John Ritchie, who's Sid Vicious, and John Wardle, which is Jar Wobble, and they all used to hang around together. So I opened the book with them all walking down the street going, "Hi, I'm John, I'm John, I'm John," and yeah, I'm John as well. And Lydon's wearing the famous "I Hate Pink Floyd" t-shirt, which he stenciled himself. I listened to loads of interviews with Lydon, with Sid, Steve Jones, Paul Cook. And knowing Jar Wobble as I've known him for nearly 30 years now, I've had many, many conversations about the whole scene, about what that entailed. And John's East End, and he speaks in that vernacular. So I know very well how these guys would speak, kind of slightly sarcastic, sardonic attitude that Lydon would have. So I think the graphic novel is quite an atmospheric intro. You know, they're going along to this audition, which eventually ends up with Lydon coming back to the sex shop in the King's Road in Chelsea and singing 18 by Alice Cooper, the famous audition where he mimes along to 18 by Alice Cooper on the jukebox in the shop with Matlock and Jordan, who was the shop assistant, who had a very distinctive look back then, as you can see in this page here in the bottom. Really nice image here of Lydon auditioning for what was to become the Sex Pistols. There was an interesting part where I art directed the artist Steve Parkhouse to drop in a bit of backstory on John Lydon, and he kind of examines in black and white too, which I thought was a nice contrast to all the colour pages before and after. Just a bit about the English occupation of Ireland in the early 1900s and the way that would have played into some of Lydon's political stance as an Anglo-Irish in England. And also some of, you know, it looks at the Irish immigration to England, and also Lydon's book, No Blacks, No Irish, No Dogs. His book actually kind of had some very funny anecdotes about his teachers, particularly one called Pissy Prentice, who always had urine stains on the front of his trousers. So I kind of had him with urine stains on front of trousers in the book as well. It was also interesting, another interesting fact that happened was that it was widely believed that they actually went to #1 with God Save the Queen, but that week the charts had a blank at the top, believe it or not, actually had a blank at the top. And then Rod Stewart, I don't know if it was Sailing or some other awful Rod Stewart dirge, got to the top of the charts that week, so effectively knocking the Sex Pistols off the coveted #1 position for a #1 single in the UK at the time. Towards the end of the book, I put words in John Lydon, or aka Johnny Rotten's mouth, but the last 3 pages of the book have him spouting on about the kind of promise of what he talked about. There is no future in England's dreaming. And in some degrees, to really what they were talking about 30 years ago, 35 years ago in the punk time, in some ways they were kind of prophesying what society was going to become like, how unequal it was going to become. And in some ways it's got better and more efficient. Society's run much better than that. But really the recent outburst, to just, you know, make this fairly topical, is Russell Brand's recent outburst, you know, to Paxman about, was in a way to me a kind of a Johnny Rotten Lydon moment about the inequality in society that we're facing now, and the way that people at the top just couldn't give a shit about anybody, and they're just out for money and power, and it's all becoming incredibly corporate now. I wanted to round the book off really in that way, with Lydon really spouting venomously, as he is now, about what happened then. I don't think he'd ever say those words now himself, although he has got the gift of the gab. in that kind of Irish way. But I was able to kind of symbolise what had happened and bring it up to date, with Lydon kind of just topping and tailing the book. And I thought that was quite an important thing, to end the book on a sort of high verbal note, if you like. And it took me quite a while to write that, but there were certain things I wanted to say about him. But obviously there are things I don't believe he would say now, but they were written in his vernacular, and I think it worked quite well. So it's a really good way to finish off the Sex Pistols graphic novel.